Alright guys, so today I'm going to work on getting the bug ready for the Fontana race that's going on June 3rd, one of the bugging events. I had some mishaps at Irwindale, ended up not racing. That's a long story. There's another video on that if you want to check it out. So today the plan is to pull the spring plates out because it's got the stock ones in it with the stock rubber. Although the rubber has been changed at some point in this car's life because it's not all weird and dry rotted. It is definitely newer rubber. It's not like 40 or 50 years old, very evident, but it is rubber, not poly, and it are stock spring plates. So problem with the car right now is the spring plates are flexing. I did change the torsion bars recently. I put 29mm short bars in it, which I think are going to work well, but because the spring plates are still stock, there's too much flex. It's still got the rubber inside, not poly. So plan for today is to install the adjustable swing axle heavy duty spring plates along with a set of polyurethane bushings. So if you stick around, you can watch that take place. I'll show you guys how to safely pull the torsion bars in and out, unload the spring plates so you don't kill yourself or hurt yourself or damage anything. It's not very hard to do if you have the right tools, so stick around, take a look, and let me know what you think. Alright guys, so one of the first things that has to happen is we're going to pull the shock off. We're going to pull this clip out of the brake line so that it can move freely, and then loosen the top bolt on the shock so that it can swing back and forth, because right now it's pinched down. So when I loosen the bottom one, this isn't going to want to move. The other thing that I'll probably have to do that I really don't want to do is I'm probably going to have to pull the camber compensator off. It's not hard to do, but it's just annoying. So pull that off, loosen the shock, pull the brake clip out, and then loosen the bolts that hold the axle tube to the spring plate, and then we can literally just take this whole assembly and scoot it out of the way so that we can then add some preload to the spring plate, pull the cap off, and then slowly release the pressure so that we can pull the spring plate off. So that's the plan of action. Let's see if we can make it happen. I always like to put the bolts back together when I take them out so I know what goes where. And that's what I was talking about with the shock. So now I can move it around freely and it's not going to bind, but I don't have to pull this all the way out. I can leave that attached. This just gets me the freedom I need. going to try to cheat the system and not pull the camber compensator out, but we'll see how far I get. Okay, so the brake line's loose so that it can move around freely. If you don't do that and you pull this away, depending on how long your hard line is, you might break it, you might snag it. If you have drum brakes, it'll be a different story. You'll probably have to pull the whole thing out anyway. But this is how I have this set up with the rear disc brakes. So I have a rubber line coming from the back of the caliper into this hard line here, and then the hard line clips in on the axle tube, and then there's a stainless steel line going back into another hard line down by the trans. That's how mine is set up. Yours might be different depending on who installed it, but you know, like I said, I would probably take it out because you could break your hard line. Got it. So I might not be able to do that when I put the other spring plates in. The only reason I was able to do that is because the spring plate has so much flex in it, I could just bend it back, pull the bolt out. So that camber compensator is probably gonna have to come out anyway. But with that, the axle tube is free, so I'm gonna go grab a jack stand and then see if I can get it moved over here and then support it with the jack stand. Hey guys, so I ended up having to pull the camber compensator out because I couldn't get the axle up. So it's just 4 bolts. You don't even have to take them out. You just loosen them, put a jack under it, lower the jack, and the whole thing just drops out. I'll show you what that looks like a little bit later. But for now, spring plate, or I'm sorry, the axle tube is off of the spring plate, being supported by a jack stand here. So it's not going anywhere. It's not going to sag down. I'm not going to rip my boot, nothing like that. And then it frees up the spring plate to be, I can add some preload, I can pull the cover off, and then slowly release the pressure, which I will show you right now. So let's move this, put this over here, so we can get you guys a better angle on this thing. Okay, that looks pretty good. So this is the tool I have. There's a couple different tools. So this is the one I use, and this piece here will go over the bolt on the body mount, which is here. I'll show you that. The bottom of it I've modified. So this piece here will slide over the spring plate down here, and then I've got a bolt and a washer. And if I tighten it, it'll bring the spring plate up. If I loosen it, it'll pull it down. So this is an MP tool, and this came with a kind of like a 2-handle deal that you twist, and for a swing axle car it works fine, but on an IRS car like the one behind me, it doesn't work fine. And the reason why is because on an IRS car you can't just pull the whole axle assembly away. You either have to pull it up or push it down, and I don't think you can get enough clearance if you pull it up, so you have to push it downward underneath the spring plate. And when you do that, you have all this stuff down here that gets in the way of those 2 bars, and you can't get any twist action on them. So what I did was I took this to Lowe's, the whole tool, and I went to their bolt section, or nut and bolt section, and I found one that fit. Unfortunately, because this one has been used a lot and used with that 2-handle deal, some of my threads aren't the greatest. So like right now, this gets stuck in some points. It's not a big deal, but sometimes it's a bit of a hindrance. Still works for what I needed to do, so I'm okay with it. This is how it's going to attach. So this goes on up here on the body mount. And this is a made in China tool. On this particular car, it doesn't, this piece here is supposed to fit, this round piece is supposed to fit over the bolt here. And on this car, it doesn't work. What's interesting is on the other car, on the IRS car, it does. But for the sake of what I'm doing, it's enough. And I've done this enough times to know that it's not going to be a big deal. And eventually, with enough tension on this, it will catch on that bolt and it's not going anywhere once it does. So I'm just tightening up the bolt on the bottom and getting rid of all the extra slack. Okay. So there's all the extra slack out. This is what it looks like, fully assembled. So the bottom piece that's channeled that I showed you is going over this spring plate. So the spring plate is sitting, you know, if this is the spring plate and this is the tool, right, it's sitting like this. And then of course the top is on the body mount. So what we're going to do is, I have a big ass wrench, this is an 1 1/8, and we're going to tighten the bolt on the bottom. And what we'll see happen, what we will see happen is the spring plate that sits on the perch right here, it'll start to move up. And we're waiting for that movement upward to happen so that we know we've got some preload on the spring plate. So the more and more you turn this, the harder and harder it's going to get, because you're twisting that torsion bar. Okay, so now I have here, I can fit, let's see if we can move the light. I can fit a screwdriver between where the spring plate stop is and the spring plate. So I have preload on the spring plate. So at this point I can loosen, and actually I can fully remove the cap. So there's 4 bolts that hold that in, and that can come all the way out now because everything is being held in here. I don't have to worry about you know, anything popping off. Okay, so we got the tool all rigged up. I have my pry bar wedged between the bottom of the stop for the spring plate and the spring plate. And what I'm doing is applying downward pressure to pull the spring plate this way. As I'm doing that, I'm going to loosen the tension on the tool, which will loosen the tension on the torsion bar so that we can safely remove the spring plate. So let's go ahead and do that now. Help if I went the right way. Okay, so we should be home free on that. So at this point, I'm going to pull the cap all the way off, pull the bolt out. Okay, so this is all the way loose now. Here, let's go right. So you can see the tool is no longer holding anything on. I can actually pull it all the way off now. And you can see there's the angle of the spring plate. You can tell there's not very much preload in these, and that's because I'm using 29mm bars. If you have thinner bars, chances are you're going to have more angle here, especially if you have stock bars. If you have stock bars, this angle is huge. It's like down here. So because the bars are thicker, I run less preload, because if I were to run more, it would be like really difficult to get this over the stop, and if I did, it would be rock hard. So even at this angle where it's you know, it doesn't add much, right? It only moved up like a hair. The car sat kind of high the way it was. It was about, you know, 5 fingers. If you were to put 5 fingers between the fender and the tire, that's about how much of a gap there was, at least my 5 fingers. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna clock these better with these plates in, and then I'm gonna put the new ones in with the adjusters, because I don't want to get confused with how these ones sat versus how those ones sat, and right now they match side to side. So I'm gonna get this set up the way I want it, with the stock plate in, and then I'll put the other plate in and make sure it's in that same position and make sure I get the preload adjuster where I want it. Which is probably going to be backed all the way out, because I think I'm going to go pretty high with these, and then if it sits too low, I can adjust the preload upward rather than having to pull the, you know, all this back apart, and that's why I bought the adjustable ones. So what I'm going to do is do one click opposite in and out. So I don't remember which is which, but the torsion bars are splined differently on the inner and the outer, and if you do just one in one direction, I think it's like 8 degrees of a difference, which is really big. And if you do the other end, it's something like 6.5 or something. I don't remember exactly where the math is. I think it's maybe 7.8 and 6.5 or something. But if you do, you know, the inner one direction and the outer another direction, and you do opposites, you can fine tune it. And by doing that, it's less than 1 degree change in the angle of the plate. So I'm gonna go probably 3 clicks, and that's gonna be inner and outer. So what I'll do is change the inner 3 times up, which is gonna put the spring plate like way up here, right? It'll be angled like this, and then the outer I'll bring it down 3 clicks, which honestly, I'll be able to put this thing on without the tool, because you know, it's gonna sit real high, but that's okay because I have really thick bars in here, so I'm not worried about bottoming out, and it should be okay. If not, then I have the adjusters and I can add preload so that you know, if it's too soft, or if I bottom out or whatever happens, I can just add preload to it and stiffen it up. So I'm gonna do that and we'll see what it looks like. So to start, what I want to have happen is the torsion bar to stay on the outer on the spring plate and have the whole thing come out from the inner, but it doesn't always work out that way. Okay, so you can see it didn't work out that way, but that's okay. So I can also pull the inside rubber off over here. And then what I'm gonna do is move this bar. This is a sway away 29mm bar. We'll pull it out and we're gonna turn it this direction 3 times. Okay, so that's 1, that's 2, that's 3. And then we'll see where our spring plate can line up. which is probably gonna, honestly, it's probably gonna be about there. I'm pretty sure. But we'll go down one and see what it looks like. Okay, so if I go there, so I have two options at this point. I mean, important thing is we just make both sides match. But if I go at this rate, the spring plate will sit on here with 0 preload, and it, you know, it'll come up a bit when there's weight on it, but it won't come up much because, like I said, these are thick bars. So unfortunately, indexing the torsion bars is quite a bit of trial and error. And then depending on what size torsion bars you have, it's going to change, you know, what you end up doing. So I'll probably end up doing that, which is pretty much straight. You know, and I can slide this on without the tool, because otherwise I would have to go up one more. Which will be that. And I think that's too much. Yeah, that's too much. So there's about a finger gap between the stop for the spring plate and the you know, the bottom of the plate, so I can fit my finger in there. And honestly, this is probably where the car should be sitting once there's weight on it. So if we do this when there's no weight on it, once you do put weight on it, it's going to be hitting, you know, it's going to be very close to the top. You know, this is like the bump stop, so to speak. So the spring plate can't travel higher than that because it's going to hit here, and there's going to be a small amount of preload that gets added once the car gets put down on its wheels. So I think that's way too much, and I think if I do this much, I'm asking for problems. So I'll go one lower, and I think that will be good. I'm gonna put the other spring plates with no preload, and they should sit in the same position. You know, one lower than this. And then if it like I said, if it does sit too low, I can add preload to it by using the adjuster screw. So I'm gonna go get the polyurethane bushings opened up, get those greased up, put them on the new spring plate, and then get that installed. So I will be right back. Okay guys, so I got the new polyurethane bushing in, and if you're doing this, you'll notice that the new bushing doesn't usually want to sit in place. I can see it's popping out. These are a pain in the ass to put in when they're new. Once you put them in once and they've got a squish to them, they're real easy to get in and out, and they're kind of formed to the car. So like, what I mean by that is, if you look at the rubber one, you can see it's all smashed. Right? That's normal. That's going to happen to this one too. And once it does, it'll be real easy to get in and out and put back together. But the first time is a pain in the ass. So we'll see if this one cooperates. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I did grease this up. Greased up both of the bushings. You make sure you do that, or this thing's gonna squeak like crazy. And we'll see how this lines up. Okay, so the problem at hand is I can't get this over. This might be the wrong size. Oh man, if that's the case, I'm not going to be very happy. Yeah, this should slip on. Okay, we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board on this one. So I ordered these from Caddyshack. They're super cool guys, but I think they might have sold me the wrong bushing. So we're gonna have to take some measurements and come back. Okay, crisis averted. So that was my bad. I totally forgot that. So on the spring plate, the inside is a 2-inch diameter and the outside is 1 7/8 inches. So I actually got 2 sets of poly bushings, one for each side. So I mistakenly just opened one package and threw it on. That was my bad. So now this will just go together like it's supposed to. Like that. Okay, and that is just about straight where we mocked it up previously, so I'm happy with this. This is pretty much exactly where it was with the other spring plates. So what we'll do is try to get this all bolted. Well, what we'll have to do is see, the hard part's going to be putting this on. Right, getting this back on here with these poly bushings is usually a pain in the ass. And sometimes you have to use longer bolts and all this weird stuff. So we'll see if it'll fit. I gotta grease up this outer bushing, and then we'll do that real quick. So I use Moly EP grease for my poly bushings. You might use something different. This is just what I do. So I'm also gonna do the inside of the retainer. The cover. Get that all greased up too. You can kind of see the outside here where the bumps are. So the flattest part is here, so we can rotate the bushing and try to get it to line up about how it's going to be, which looks like it's about there. I want to pull the bushing off and make sure it fits this cap. So it's going to be tight. You know, that's what we want, but it's going to be a pain in the ass, I can already tell. So you can see how far away this is. But that bolt's got to go all the way through here and then thread in this distance where my left index finger is. And because we swapped out the polyurethane bushings, they're sticking out real far. That's normal, it happens. again, because the rubber squishes real easy. So you can imagine, this is the bolt. All right, there's no way it's long enough, so we're gonna have to get creative here to try to find a way. Last time I did this on a car, it was on the IRS car. What I did was I used longer bolts to get it started, and then once I had, you know, a couple of the bolts in like 2 of the corners to get the cover all the way on, I was able to put the other 2 in, and then I took them out, took the long ones out one at a time and replaced them with the shorter ones. So more than likely that's what I'm gonna have to do, and I might have to steal a couple off the other car temporarily to do that. So I'll be back. Okay guys, I ended up pulling some bolts out of the other bug, the IRS bug, and these are the ones I used when I did the polyurethane bushings and the new spring plates in the IRS one, and that's this. So you can see the difference in length, right? Quite a bit longer. And what that's going to do is allow me to thread in and get a good squish on this, so I can get the other 2 corners in and then pull them out one by one, put the smaller ones back in. So when you're doing this, you want to make sure you put these in the right holes. So this, you know, there's 4 holes here, and the top left one towards the rear of the vehicle, you can't use that one. And the reason why is because it's a blind hole, so there's a stop on the back, and if you were to thread this in, you're probably going to strip it out. The bottom one, however, towards the rear of the vehicle, this one here, it goes all the way through. There's nothing back there, so threading this all the way in is not going to be an issue. Same thing with the top right towards the front of the vehicle. So I've already got that one in. I'm going to get this bottom left one in, and then once those are tightened down, I'll get the smaller ones in the top left, bottom right, and then remove them and go from there. Okay, now we'll see if the smaller ones will fit in the other 2 holes. Okay, that one's threading in, so that's good. Grab another one. It's threading in. Now the shorter ones are in and they're pretty tight. So what I'm going to do is loosen out the longer ones one at a time and then replace them. So that's all there is to it. The key to doing this is making sure you get the longer bolts. You can go to Lowe's, you can go to Home Depot, wherever, and they should have a metric set of bolts. Just take one of the old ones with you so you can make sure you get the right thread pitch. I think they're 125s on the thread pitch, but I think they're M8 125s. But double check, take them with you. You know, I can measure these, but you know, get something that's 2 or 3 times as long. And honestly, for this bottom one, it doesn't matter. You can get one that's like crazy long, right? You know, doing the top right towards the front of the car, there's a bit of a distance here that you'd have to overcome, so you don't want to go too long for that one. But you know, just get one that's 2.5 times longer than what the stock one is, and chances are it's going to work out just fine for you. So what I'm going to do is button up the rest of this and then get on the other side.